Welcome to the Founders Focus podcast, an open conversation with TechCore founder Gary Beach and those who care about the future of technology. Founders Focus invites you along for the journey as we examine technology and how it impacts the way we work and live.
Welcome to this edition of Founders Focus podcast. My name is Gary Beach. I'm vice chair and founder of TechCore. Founded in 1995 and with a demonstrated track record of success for nearly 30 years, TechCore continues to close the equity gap in technology by delivering high-quality, career-connected technology programs to K-12 students historically underrepresented in technology fields and their educators. Today, we will be talking with Jama Cobb, the Work-Based Learning Coordinator for the Educational Services Center of Central Ohio, otherwise known as ESCO. Jama is a self-described connector of dots, innovative thinker, problem solver, strategic leader, and community engager who leads the way for career-oriented programming in Central Ohio. This spring, TechCore worked with ESCO and Franklin University to register Student WebCore and Student TechCore as pre-apprenticeship programs with Apprenticeship Ohio. Work-based learning programs teach basic technology and job readiness skills for a designated apprentice occupation or sector to prepare students for a formal registered apprenticeship training program. Jama, we are so excited to have you join us today to help connect the dots about the importance and growth of career-connected programs. Let's get started. Jama, my friend Rick Miller, who used to be the president of Olin College of Engineering, was fond of saying, in this age of search and now AI, it's not what one knows that's important, but what one can do with what one knows is important. So before students transition, out of high school, equipping them with more than theoretical knowledge is a national imperative. Workforce readiness as a bridge that seamlessly connects educational foundations acquired in classroom to the practical demands of the workforce. There's a supply and demand thing here that is so important.
Yeah.
From your boots on the ground in Central Ohio, your experiences with groups like ESCO, why are work-based learning programs so important for students today and in the future of Ohio?
Great question, Gary. And I would like to start by kind of bringing a perspective that you don't hear too many people say. And this is really something that I feel our students need to hear, as well as our parents. We are so hyper-focused on truly trying to figure out what kids want to do. And as soon as they find interest in something, we're locking into it and we feel like we've got their future planned. My perspective on work-based learning is really, we've got to start earlier. We've got to get into the elementary level and start bringing awareness to students through conversation with the educators. This should be part of a day-to-day conversation that students and educators are having. You would ask a kid in fifth grade, they kind of think they know what they want to do, but that's truly based on the exposure and experiences they've had. And a lot of times it's a teacher or a fireman or a doctor. So my perspective is, let's start exposing students, young people, to as many options as we can so they can figure out what they don't want to do. That's truly, to me, an imperative perspective, because we take the pressure off of the students to figure out what they want to do tomorrow and say, let's start earlier. Let's give you more time to figure out the things you don't like, so that by the time we get to high school, we've had enough experiences and enough exposure so the students can start narrowing down pathways even in high school. Because to really prepare our students for high school, we have to start providing more real life experiences while they're in that 9th through 12th grade, not just 11th and 12th grade, but 9, 10, 11, and 12. So, we've got to get students ready by the time they schedule their 8th grade, at the end of their 8th grade year for their high school courses. They need to better know what they're scheduling for and why they're scheduling, using those passions and those, just their interests and their aptitudes to really better align to those choices. And then really in high school, it should be all about getting into those businesses that they've narrowed down their choices to, and some kids say, I want to be an engineer. They have no idea how many different engineer occupations there are. So it's really getting more granular by the time we get to high school. And of course, this is a dream of mine, but this is what I'm really echoing from the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio, and so is our entire work-based learning staff. So really,
No,
this is our perspective.
that's really very good perspective. It reminds me, Jama, when I was living in Massachusetts, uh, I left my job and I was unemployed, and I had to register with the Department of Labor in Massachusetts, and I had to review the 535 occupations that you could have a job in Massachusetts on, right? So yeah, I looked at it, but I shared it with the Secretary of Education and said, just like some schools say to kids, you have to volunteer time before you graduate. What if the state, the Commonwealth said, hey, look, you got to read through the 520 some odd jobs, but over here, I really like your idea on starting early. And you mentioned then high school. What did you also mention you in that early? Is that starting in elementary school?
Yeah, that's elementary. They say by fifth grade, kids have an idea of what they want to do. I don't know if that's true in your life, but I know in mine, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I had really set my hopes on that. And the older I got, the more I realized being a veterinarian isn't, cuddling and loving and training dogs. That's seeing some hard stuff. But in my mind, I had said that, and everyone around me was like, "Oh yeah, you're great with animals. That'd be perfect for you." Not even having a clue what that entailed, what kind of education it involved. But yeah, getting to the students in elementary just to give them exposure.
Yeah,
Then in middle school, giving them more intentional experiences like Tech Core has, which obviously Tech Core understands it. They're bringing it to the elementary level to get kids to see if this is an interest they have, taking it
right.
to the middle school level to say, let's build on what you're learning. And by high school, look, you could have a career in this and you're pretty good at it. So that model for all students, not just the career center students, but all students K through 12, if we could give them more opportunities at a younger age, because you think about it, Gary, it took us a long time to, at least me, to figure out what job was my fit. What am I somewhat good at, but what do I enjoy? What gets me out of bed every morning? And there's a lot of occupations. So how do we do that in the time frame that we need our students to have completed, but to do it in elementary, to start that early? And it doesn't
I,
have to be in depth. It could be just, again, awareness. What do those jobs look like?
yeah, one of my favorite. I worked in the tech business, Jama, for 40 years, and I got to hang out with some of the CEOs of the companies. And my favorite was Ginny Romedy. She was for about a decade the CEO of IBM. And she was passionate about the work like you're doing at ESCO and we are doing here at TechCore. And then one day on a stage, I saw her speak, and she was talking about, she goes, never ask a child what they want to be when they grow up. And she paused, and she then said, only ask them what problem they want to solve.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
I
I mean,
love that.
if my 7-year-old grandson came into the top left quadrant of this Zoom screen, I could say, hey, Harlan, what problem do you want to solve when you grow up? And he would go, Grandpa, I want to solve clean water. But when they, like you were saying, they self-select what they want. Okay, if you're going to do that, then you have to take, different kinds of chemistry classes and all the other things.
That's
But
right.
it all kind of works out.
That's
But
right.
getting back to the conversation here. I don't know if you saw it in April of 2024. So just a couple of months ago, the Department of Labor released a report that said college, enrollment in a 4-year college had dropped to 61% last year, and that's the lowest in 30 years. So I'd like to ask you, what in your opinion, why are students dropping out? I'll give you a couple of things here that the American Student Association talked about, they isolated 4 reasons. One was, the cost of 4-year institutions is some degree astronomical. 2, nearly 1 in 3 students say their uncertainty, as you're referencing, and I just a moment ago, about post-school plans. What do they want to do? What they want to be a musician. Why are you taking this other class? And then about 15 or 16% said they needed a desire to enter the workforce and support their family. So there are different types of pathway programs. You're familiar with them all, in terms of apprenticeships and boot camps and digital certificates and certifications and all the others. So what pathway options have you seen there at ESCO that are giving are forming college pathways for the technology workspace?
Wow, that's a great point. I will add too, recently I heard in a survey that Ohio is in the top 10 of the most student debt. So you would think that with that amount of students going to college, they're still not finding the jobs that they want. We still have so many openings and so many students that are just off track, and they have a degree, but they still don't know what they want to do with it. And I would say that the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce is really understanding this shift and the need for employers to have employees that don't necessarily have degrees. There's been, as you mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of companies that are saying this is not a requirement for us. We just want to know that you have the aptitudes and the interest to pursue this pathway. Let's get you into a job. Let's look deeper into your strengths. And then if there's more training that needs to be done, we can do that. But there's so many certifications now that industry is starting to recognize as valuable versus the degree. And let me give you an example. And I'm saying this to TechCore, who understands it the best. You guys are delivering industry recognized credentials to students while they're still in school. And so, the Ohio Department of Education invested time, energy, and money to talk to business and industry and see what valuable certificates or credentials students can earn that would fast track them into employment. And then if a degree is needed, move them into that next step. So they understand the importance of it, but it's also, to help the students really, before they graduate, to determine if this is something I want to do. Yeah, I've got this tool in my tool belt. I really like it. This is something I want to pursue. And now they've got a quicker pipeline into the workforce. So I think education is still needed and valuable. I just feel that we have such a high demand of employees that we need tomorrow because of the growth of our region, that they just need to get students ready for that next step as quickly as possible. Get them in, get them acclimated to, being an employee versus a student, and then let them build on the education after that. But it's beautiful that Ohio Department of Education and Workforce has created this experience and these tools to also become part of graduation requirements. So it's an incentive for the students to also obtain these credentials, not only just again for their tool belt, but also it's a monetary reimbursement to the school district for these students to earn these. So you can see that where the money goes, the support goes too. So it's good to see that both sides, not only education, but also industry, understand the importance of this, and they're putting an investment into it.
Jama, what agencies and organizations are in place or forming to help train teachers and guidance counselors about career-connected programs? Please tell us.
Yeah, I'd love to. This excites me because 2 years ago when I came to ESCO, my director asked me, Jama, you've been in the classroom, you came from industry, what are we missing? And immediately it came to me, we've got to educate the educators. Students spend almost 17,000 hours in their lifetime with teachers, and our teachers are amazing. They do great work. But the piece we're missing is how to connect those standards and that, those lessons, how do we bring that back to employment and careers and pathways? So 2 years ago, last in June of 2023, I launched the first Careers to Classrooms Educator Workforce Boot Camp. So for the educators, they're finishing up their school year. That first week out of school, we opened up the opportunity for them to be a part of this boot camp. They
Wow.
earned 3 grad credits for completing this. So we wanted to make sure they understood that we value their time. But we also partnered with the Columbus Chamber, and the Columbus Chamber was integral in pulling business partners together that can help us provide a hands-on experience for our educators. So really what we did was we took educators into the workforce. And so for 5 days, we visited. Each day had a specific pathway that they saw an industry. In 2024, this past June, we doubled that. So they got to see 8 different industries, and those were IT, healthcare, modern manufacturing, construction, bioscience, transportation, energy, and supply chain and logistics. So for the educators, we had 48 participate. They got to learn what the business is doing, what the business needs, what kind of jobs are available for their students, and how they can connect this back to their classroom content. Let's get this information into their subjects. Let's talk about math in a different way. Let's talk about, even social studies. What could that look like for you in a job? So we're continuing to grow that program to expand into other industry pathways so that we can really help educators bring this message back to the students.
And do you think each of those, think of a spectrum, over here you have education, over here you have employment. Are they equally responsible for creating a readiness in the workforce? Or is one more, the employers expect the educators to do it, and the educators say, we need input from you as to what you need? Is it
Yeah. That's a great question. And as far as the, students being ready for employment, there's 2 perspectives in my mind. There's the 21st century, or those, hard skills, as I call them, because there's nothing soft about them. The
right?
hard skills versus the technical skills. So, I think that without partners like TechCore, these industry recognized credentials would not be as robust and really make the impact that they're making. Because we've also tied TechCore to pre-apprenticeships, which has a whole nother set of incentives and, just the benefits from it. And in that space, what's happening is, like, Franklin University here in Central Ohio sees the value of what TechCore is doing, aligning what TechCore is teaching to credits that students can earn by doing a tech cred program, a boot camp. And then students are actually going to be able to really, eliminate some classes if they do choose to pursue a degree at Franklin University. So I compare pre-apprenticeship somewhat to College Credit Plus, where students are experiencing something, they're adding tools to their tool belt, they're gaining knowledge, they're understanding the industry, and then they can go on and utilize those skills and knowledge to eliminate some credits in college. Pre-apprenticeship is really just a business form of that.
Right.
So again, High Department of Education and Workforce is getting really creative and really helping to support the industry because they understand the huge gap that we have now. So back to your question about who's delivering, I think honestly, Gary, that is a business by business conversation. Some are saying, send us your students. We will help to cultivate those 21st century skills. Others are saying, we need you to have those in place before the students come to us, because we really need to get down to business and helping them to understand what the industry is and needs. But that's where really we've got to come together and bridge those conversations, create trainings, and embed this really in our high schools so that, when students are late to class, it's not, oh, you don't have a pass, you need to go to the office, be on time. It's more of, you were late to class. Do you understand what that means when you're working? There's only so many times that you can be tardy to work, and we just need to have more workforce conversations on a daily basis with our young people.
Well said, Jama. You mentioned the dynamic aspect of Central Ohio, particularly from the tech sector that's going on there. You have those wonderful rivers keeping all the data centers nice and cool.
That's
But
right.
we were talking with Pat Gelsinger, who's the CEO of Intel, a couple of months ago, and he said something in an email that kind of floored me. They're gonna, once those two plants are built, the big fabrication plants you're probably
Mhm.
familiar with, they're going to hire 6,000 people. 60% of those 6,000 people, the jobs they're hiring for, will not need four-year college degrees. Will not
Yeah.
need them. So times are changing. What's not changing is somewhat the perception in our society about vocational education. As you're familiar, in 1984, the Carl Perkins Vocational Education Act tried to put a shine a light on that. Yet here we are, exactly 40 years later, and young people who choose non-degree pathways must overcome significant pressure, whether from their family, their friends, their peers, or themselves. What must be done, Jama, to educate the public about the vitality and the need for non-degree pathways and for them to pursue? What does the public, we talked about the employers and the educators, what do we need to do to raise the public consciousness of the importance of voced, who, for me, not that it matters, one thing that it's like fingernails on a blackboard when somebody says junior colleges. To me, that's like the consolation prize. You didn't win this, you're going to a junior college. So what does our nation have to do to is it a school board thing? What can we do to put more of a national emphasis on the importance of vocational, or let's call the other letters, career technical education?
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. I have a career tech background. I taught finance to 11th and 12th graders here in Ohio. And, I'm grateful for the initiative from our governor and lieutenant governor's office to really emphasize the importance of the training that's being delivered in our career centers. I see that our career centers are full. They truly are at capacity. So I don't know that, I think it's starting to speak for itself, to be quite honest. I think our next challenge is going to be, how do we add more students to those experiences? And with the equipment grants that have been given to school districts that are not necessarily career centers, we're starting to see a little shift in the model of education where districts are bringing more career tech experiences to the comprehensive schools. And I think that's really going to help win over maybe some of those parents in the upper socioeconomic areas of our communities to understand that it's a means to a job. It doesn't label these students. They truly are leaving with um, amazing tools in their tool belt. They're not only just the tools, but also the 21st century skills that they're learning. That, a lot of them have to wear uniforms at the career centers. They have to walk the walk. And, they're interacting directly with businesses on a regular basis. And I see that we're going to have a shift in education that mimics more of the career center. At least I hope. Because our walls are busting, the classrooms are full. We're turning students away by, droves that can't get into the career center that really would appreciate that kind of experience. At the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio, it's so important to us that I'm a work-based learning coordinator. I also have a colleague of mine, John Hambrick, who is also a work-based learning coordinator. And then we also have two career pathway specialists who are truly just working with districts to do an audit of their educational opportunities and then help them better align what those pathways are going to look like, not just in increments, but as a pipeline to employment. How do we better prepare our students? So I know at ESCO, we're doing everything we can to help help the school districts understand. But with that comes, involving the community as well.
No, you're
Um,
right. And
I was just
please.
going to add one more quick thing that we do is we are part of a healthcare sector partnership where there are 6 major hospitals here in Central Ohio, and we have brought all of those partners together to our convention center, and they had a 1 day event where we brought in ninth graders to see 6 different, I'm sorry, not six, there was 12 different career paths that they could take, whether it's respiratory, phlebotomy. There was just different, really surgical tech, any of those areas that students could kind of walk around and learn more, and then take that back to their parents. So we're hoping to open that up even more to more possibilities of more engagement with the community and the parents and students alike.
Well, that segues nicely into my next question, Jama, in terms of you mentioned parents. Um, and you mentioned the concept of the shift in opinion. And again, that survey from the American Student Assistance Program kind of reported remarkable data about parents, where 88% of parents who were surveyed expressed some level of interest in career technical education, and almost 40% said they want their schools to advise students about post-secondary options. Obviously, you're doing wonderful stuff at ESCO. If there's a parent listening on this podcast, what would be avenues to organizations that they could reach out to that could get CTE going in their school district?
Really, that conversation starts if we're talking about starting a career tech program within a comprehensive
Mm,
school. Really talking to leadership. I think really gather your data. You
right.
need to know, is this is it something you have a passion for just because it's what you do, or is it truly a demand in your area? I think gather the data to see if it's something that would be viable. Let me give an example. We had some districts who were really excited about a career tech program in their comprehensive school becoming a satellite to that career center. And they were super excited about it, thought, kids are going to sign up in droves, only to find out they really couldn't even find any business partners to help support those advisory council meetings or the business advisory meetings because it just wasn't a demand in the area. So gather the data, approach the district. I think you need to make sure that there's enough students that have an interest in it as well. And then work with, your career center. That conversation always has to start with the career center because of that partnership that they have, because they already have access to a lot of business partners. They already have a pulse on what's coming down the pike for jobs and what the in-demand occupations are and how we can really give students, a good earned wage once they graduate.
No, it comes back to that basic economic principle, supply and demand.
Right.
On everything. I mentioned a moment ago about Intel, but other corporations, for their perspective on non-degree programs like GE, Delta, IBM, Kellogg's, what have you, they've all dropped degree requirements for many roles and are moving instead towards what they call skills-based hiring. What comes to mind when those 3 words are put together: skills-based hiring? I mean, it sounds simple, but it's not. I mean, it's kind of profound.
It
Um,
really is. Yeah, I think because of the amount of job openings we have right now, they are looking for students who have experiences, and even at our collegiate level, we're not always doing a good job of preparing our students to have skills. They have the knowledge sometimes coming, or a lot of times coming out of college, but for example, I have a daughter that went to college, got a 4-year degree, had no shadowing. She was a college athlete too, so that limited
right.
her time, but didn't have any type of experience to take with her for her resume. So employers are really looking, they're saying, give us the students who have the aptitude, the interest, and the passion, and we can train them. So if they have exposure, they know that students have invested some time and energy and knowledge into learning, then they're willing to give these students an opportunity and help grow them into the employees that they need. And I think some of that goes back to even college graduates don't have the experience. So really the focus is more of give them some baseline skills for the retention piece. If you're bringing a student in who has no idea what they're going to be doing and you hire them and they don't like it because they haven't tried it before, now you're starting over, and we know how expensive that can be
Oh
as an
yeah,
investment for a company.
absolutely. When I heard when I was working, um, talking to chief information officers, was often their reluctance to invest in hiring, in skills-based hiring, because they felt, okay, fine, I'll hire person A, I'll upskill them, and then they'll leave and go to another job. Are you finding in your conversations at ESCO with employers that that mindset that I just described is less prevalent now than it was?
I believe it is, and I really think it's due to the fact that employers understand the importance of sharing those opportunities of what the next step for that employee could, that they're not coming in to be stagnant, that there's growth opportunity. And they're creating, they're designating employees to say it's your job to help educate our employees on what the next step could be for them and how to get to it. So that has become a really big focus that I'm happy to see, because you're right, upskill them and they leave to go earn more money. Where if you can build a good culture, you can provide those next opportunities, those employees are going to stay and they feel valued because you've invested in them.
And not to put you on the spot, but I'll put you on the spot.
Sure.
Anyway, you mentioned earlier the open jobs, and there's 8.2 million of those in our country right now. Um, not I wouldn't use the word responsible, but I think it helps describe the concept. Are employers being overly selective in their hiring? Like you go on to a LinkedIn and you can see a lot of 800-word resumes.
Yeah.
So these employers being too selective, or indeed do the job applicants not have the skills, or is it a little bit of both?
I feel the bigger gap we have right now is employers have not looked at their job descriptions for decades sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk to employers, I'm always trying to remind them, those that are willing to hire students in high school or right out of, you have got to evaluate your job descriptions, because if it's saying that you need a degree, or and really in fact you're taking certifications now or industry recognized credentials that students are earning, they're
Mm-hmm.
not even applying for these jobs when rightfully they could be hired. So I think things just don't always catch up to themselves when we're making changes. And I feel that, for instance, I believe it was US Bank was one of the first banks to hire students out of high school to work in cybersecurity. And I'm talking 17-year-olds,
Right.
that it just took that employer, that person, to sit down with a young person and have it basically an interview to learn what they are truly capable of doing, and realizing, wow, there's a whole pipeline of untapped talent that we're not even thinking about because they haven't hit that magic number of 18. And so he was able to change the policy within the bank to hire students while they're still in the career centers, or if they're in those pathways in their comprehensive schools, to go ahead and get hired while they're in high school. Not, they're doing important things. They're not giving them clearance for everything, but these students are doing some pretty amazing things, and while they're still in high school, that's impactful. Another example would be healthcare. Healthcare was adamant that nothing below 18 would even be considered, and we worked with many partners, but the first was a hospital here in Central Ohio, Trinity Health, or what we call Mount Carmel, was the first to drop their age to 16 and bring in students who have their STNA or are going through, a medical office program, or, a PSA program, who are on a fast track to become nurses, but that's all they can do while they're in high school. So, it also takes us working with policies and legislation to lower ages to be able to give these experiences earlier.
It reminds me of one of my favorite stories from my career. Our newspaper used to partner with the Smithsonian Institute down in Washington. And every first Monday of June, we would go down to DC and it'd be 1,000 people, black tie, black gown, and we would give out awards to prominent technologists. And one year we were giving an award to an MIT professor. Doesn't make any difference who he is, but anyway, we call him up to the podium. And as he comes to the podium, he asks the producers in the back of the room to bring up the lights. And I'm standing behind him. I'm going, I don't know, where's he going with this?
Right.
And so the producer brought up all the lights, and you could see all the men and women in their evening gowns and tuxes. And he goes, I'm going to ask you a question, and raise your hand. And the question says, raise your hand if you promote by age at your company. Raise your hand. Now, if somebody goes, from 17 to 18, they automatically get a raise. Nobody raised their hand. And he paused, and they looked down the crowd again. He goes, then why have we committed our country to an education system that says, congratulations, you just graduated from 3rd grade, go right across the hall, you're all in 4th. Some of those kids should be in 8th. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a great perspective.
It really was.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about perspective as we're closing up here. What kind of advice, what kind of skills? I just wrote some down when I was listening to you a moment ago. Cyber, AI, cloud, healthcare, you mentioned a moment ago. What type of tech skills do you find are in in big demand out there in Central Ohio?
I wish I knew all of the careers that were available. I know that with the industry recognized credential list, the CompTIAs are really needed, even the Microsoft. But I mean, there's deeper, more involved credentials that are needed. I would say, bioscience is really exploding here in Central Ohio. There's a lot of skills from that perspective. Our construction is booming. There's a job that I didn't even know existed until I had the fortunate privilege of being out in the industry. But it is a 3D, let me think of the word here. It's the 3D, I'm missing it.
Is it the printer? No.
No, it's where you put the Oculus on and you can see the virtual reality. Yeah.
VR. Yeah, sure.
So the virtual reality, where students, and this is from the Superior Group, who is a huge construction company here in Central Ohio, they introduced me to their department, and it looked like a gaming department. They had all their lights were dim. They had gaming chairs, and the employees were designing 3D virtual reality blueprints. So what's happening is when a construction site, they draw out the blueprints, they can put these goggles on and see exactly where the electric runs, where the HVAC runs, where the walls are going to be put up. They can do them by layers. And I'm like, gosh, what kind of degree you need for this? I could see a million kids wanting to do this. It's gamifying construction.
Sure.
And they're like, there's no degree. It's just certifications. So every single industry truly needs an IT background. They need STEM, students who have an interest in aptitude for STEM. Every industry, I could go on and on and on. It's just, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes when we're talking to different business and industry and all the jobs and all the skills that they really need. But I'll put it this way, really what we hear the most from industry is, give me a student that's going to show up on time, that's going to stay off their phone, who's going to be investing and wanting to learn their jobs, and the sky's the limit for these kids.
As I close out our interview, and I want to thank you. When I saw your CV of connector of dots, innovative thinker, problem solver, strategic leader, and self-described community engager. You are all those things and more. And on behalf of TechCore, Jama Cobb, Work-Based Learning Coordinator, Co-Coordinator for the Educational Services Center of Central Ohio, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
My pleasure.
Of course, founder of Focus Podcast, I'm Gary Beach.